I've been reading Ezekiel chapter 1, and I've been studying it, and I've read a lot of commentaries and I guess you could say interpretations of Ezekiel chapter 1, and a lot of people make it out to be a representation type vision. The clouds comes out of the north, and that's a reference to the army of Babylon. As I'm studying this vision that Ezekiel had, I see less correlation between of an interpretation, I guess, and stuff that actually happened in the Bible that are directly related to Ezekiel's vision, like the cloud that Ezekiel saw, which in Ezekiel's vision was more or less a curtain to where Jesus Christ was coming from, and he saw lightning, and he heard thunder, and all that stuff that comes with clouds. And the cloud that Ezekiel sees, it's very strangely similar to the cloud that's on Mount Sinai in chapter 19 of Exodus. And when he describes his vision at the end, he says, "And this is the likeness of the glory of God." And it just seems like it seems the same glory of God that Isaiah saw, that in chapter 6, that Zechariah saw in chapter 6 of Zechariah, and in chapter 4 of Revelation. And when I've been reading these things, it seems less like a interpretation vision and more like the glory of God that everyone else has seen through the Bible. And what I realized is that this glory of God, when it filled the temple in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, nobody could enter into the temple because the glory of God was there. And when you read Ezekiel chapter 10, the glory of God was in the temple. It seems like to me that this was Ezekiel seeing the glory of God. He wasn't in the promised land where he could see the glory of God in the temple. And he was a priest, of course. And God shows him in this vision that you do not have the representation of the glory of God, but I am here with you, and this is the real glory of God. There is no representation cherubim to represent whatever God wanted it to represent. I have the real ones. And you don't have the representation, a small bit of the glory of God that is somewhat confined. And of course you can't confine God in any building of any kind. But he's showing Ezekiel that the glory of God is still here no matter where you are. And it hit me that this glory of God, this intense glory of God that so many people have seen through the Bible, they have experienced it. I've heard people preach on it, but I've never actually realized it, that this is the glory of God living in us. He doesn't live in a brick house anymore. He lives in us now. And he makes a home in us. This is the glory of God, this cloud of lightning, this all-consuming fire, this likeness of a man sitting on a throne. This glory of God is living inside of us. And I end up acting like, when I think about it, I end up acting like Isaiah in chapter 6, where the glory of God affects him in such a way that he was already prophesying before chapter 6, and he says, "I am a man of unclean lips." That's the effect that the glory of God has on somebody. And whenever we experience the glory of God, we are drawn to our knees, just like Ezekiel was. He said he could not stand. He fell on his face. And we experience God and we understand His holiness. And how can we stand in His presence? It is an impossibility that a mere human being can see God in His holiness, in His glory, when high and lifted up, when His train filled the temple, and not be affected by it. How can we, as Christians, live with Jesus Christ in us, in this glory of God in us, and still act as if He's not there? And I feel like I am, I guess you could say, a man of unclean lips, just by thinking about the glory of God. And I seriously hope that people can understand that this is not just a God up there living in us, blah, blah, blah. This is God living in us. He is living in us. The glory of God that filled the temple, that the priest could not enter in. Okay? The same glory of God resting on the Mount Sinai. This is the God living in us. David said there is no room for God. Nothing can contain Him. He is uncontainable, and yet He lives inside of us. You cannot explain that in any human terms. Ezekiel couldn't even explain the vision that he saw, and he gave us the most descriptive vision of the glory of God in the Old Testament. Nobody else did it, and he still had a problem with it. And this is a priest, probably a learned person. He's a priest. He learned a lot of stuff, and yet he could not describe it. And that is the effect that Jesus Christ has on our lives when the glory of God takes over our lives and He changes us.